What's up, everybody? Sorry about the delay. Just got a lot of stuff going on today. We're reorganizing, well, in waves, our entire shop, moving around racking, desks. So today I was out there getting new workstations wired up in the print farm, converting an L desk from one big oversized desk to two workstations for people. So that's all good. And then found out the monitors we have didn't have VESA mounts, so that was fun because I bought arms to get the monitors off the desk to have more desk area. And yeah, turns out one of the pairs of monitors didn't have VESA mounts. That's what I get for assuming. So anyways, it's Monday. Mondays are a little crazy. We push back the stream time because so much happens on Mondays, and sometimes we still start the stream late, and it is what it is. So how's everybody doing today? I'm going to go through and check the chat here. And let's see. I don't know when chat started rolling in. I'm assuming because I just kicked it on the computer. There's some people that ask questions that probably got cut off. So if you asked a question while you're waiting for us to go live, you should probably re-ask it. The first oldest chat I see here is from Kyle Fegley saying hello, everyone. And I see Kyle's in here, Jonathan. Let's go through, see what channel members we got here that are active. We got Jonathan, Kyle, Dominic, Max CJ, Dale Scott, Matt Madoob, Vincent Roble. Vincent, that's a new membership badge. Looks like you joined. Thanks for joining. Ram Designs here. Some of the regulars, I'll give you guys a shout. Mr. R. Mills. Let's say Nemo. Mr. Nemo, I found Nemo. He's here. He's in the chat. And we got TJ Dorman. Anybody else trickle in? Let's see here. Guitar Man. Guitar Man joined up. That's a new face I haven't seen in a bit. Let's see. I'm looking. Yes, I have both the fur bags with me here. There's the little one right here, and the OG is there on the couch. Hi, Clara. Are you a good girl? Look at him. He's like, how dare you talk to her? I know. You get jealous. But we're going to see how they do. They've had plenty of time to play. So let's see what questions we got here today. I don't really have any tangents to go off on. I have started playing with the firmware on here, but I also have started doing a lot of pushes. Spent about 7 hours this weekend getting Unified 2 prepared to go to Marlin 208, and you can see that on our 208 testing branch. I have not done test compiles, and the reason why is the last thing I need to do is actually check the platform.io configs, because they changed a lot of that file, the platform.io.ini, from the previous release, which is 2072 to 208, and then in the process of going to 208, they released 208.1, so I then had to merge in more changes. So I'm trying to shoot to get that out in the next couple of weeks here. It really depends on what's going on. Things are a little bit slower here in terms of sales, so I got a little more time to work on some things, and our team is taking this slower period right now to get the shop organized and, kind of honed in, so taking advantage of that time. So hopefully it's just a temporary slowdown, but we'll see what's going on. We're keeping an eye on things. But, everything's moving along. Let's see what questions we have here in the chat. We got people rebuilding their computers. Had to reinstall Linux after 10 years. Backup drive died before I could get most of the drive back. Oh, that sucks. RAID 1, man. RAID is not backup, but it makes drive failure a lot less painful. Jonathan Bayer broke his server. You guys just keep screwing up your computers, don't you? Man. I have ours basically set up so we have everything backed up on our server, which then also has backups of the backups. So our workstations here are basically disposable. We do use some cloud stuff here, but we also back up our cloud stuff to local. I've gone through losing data too many times on a personal level, and seen businesses lose stuff that I'm very, very anal about data retention here and backups. So Joe Downey, is the Unified Ender 3v2 firmware going to be updated so it allows baby steps? I've seen other firmware with it in the stock screen. So I know what firmware you're talking about, and the problem is the guy created his own Marlin branch to modify the screen, and we do not use random third-party branches. So if you want to use, I can't remember the name of the guy, but there's a GitHub repo where a guy's been hacking up the Ender 3 V2 stock screen. And what he should be doing is doing the modifications to Marlin and then doing a pull request so those changes can be merged into Marlin main. Until he does that, no, it will not be updated to include that, because trying to take code from some random guy's branch and also keeping in sync with the Marlin code is a nightmare, especially when, let's say, they make a bunch of changes. Let's say the third-party person. You know, you got Marlin, you've got us, and this third party to make an Ender 3 V2 firmware. And I know which one you're talking about. I can't remember the name of the user on GitHub, but I know there's one that's out. It was posted on Reddit, where the guy's been hacking the screen. It's pretty buggy. I did play with it, but it's promising. So what they should do is be working on it, get it working, and then merge their changes so it can be part of the Marlin main firmware. So if that ever happens, it'll be merged. But so let's say he's starting and working on, you know, he's starting with codebase 207.2. Well, now Marlin's on 208.1. So if he doesn't update his version to 208.1, and I'm using his as well as 207.2, I can't go to Marlin 208.1 for all the other printers, because all the printers we support use the same code base. So it complicates things. As long as it's in main Marlin, any of those new features when a new version of Marlin comes out get brought over to our firmware, but I'm not going to start pulling from random people's repositories. You know, if there's tons of people working on little forks and branches of Marlin on their own repositories, and by all means, give them a shot, check them out. We have, like, if you're using something like our Easy ABL and you want to know the optimal settings, we have a document that we keep updated, and that's already updated from Marlin 208.1 on what settings you should be using, the recommended settings, etc. So, but yeah, it's I'm not going to take anything from other than the main Marlin branch. That's it. So the only code changes that will be implemented in our firmware is stuff that I've done. I don't want to start having to manage not only Marlin's changes, which take a lot of time to merge in and qualify and test and keep updated to make sure things work, but all these random ones. The ideal thing is, and we've done this when I've coded in new features of Marlin, is you make a pull request against Marlin, and then they'll evaluate the code. And if it's not going to break a bunch of stuff for other configurations and other machines, they'll merge that in. So if you are working on your own Marlin branch and working on new features for, you know, screens or boards or printers, etc., when you're done, you should merge it up to or do a pull request against the main Marlin branch so they can see what you're working on. And not only could they then merge it in, but they might even have feedback on how to make it better or, you know, whatnot. That's the beauty of the whole open source stuff. But we have the policy of we only pull Marlin code from the main Marlin repo, and then we add our own finishing touches on top of that. So, but there's nothing stopping me from using somebody else's, but I can't comment on, you know, what features and stability from someone else's random Marlin branch. So, let's see here. You guys need to ask questions. I'm scrolling down. Someone's asked me to set up their workstation. Nope, I've got one more to set up, and after that, I hope to not have to set up workstation for a while. Octoprint updates? Yes, go ahead and install your Octoprint updates. If it asks you to update, go ahead and update it. I have been trying to keep our image on our site updated, but the EasyPi images, they don't break if you update Octoprint. So we update ours here just fine. If it'll pop up and say, hey, there's a new version, go ahead and update. You should keep Octoprint updated, especially if you have it talking to the outside world through, like, you know, even a third-party plugin like Spaghetti Detective. I'm a big fan of Spaghetti Detective, especially for people that are just average home users, and you shouldn't be opening up ports to your EasyPi or your Octoprint setup. The third-party service like that is great, but still keep everything updated because it is a device that's going to be talking to the interwebs. So unless you set it up to block, you know, it's got to pull down updates. It goes and checks if there's new plugins and stuff. So Nemo Griff is asking, how we submit for quotes for the print farm? He's looking to get something printed. So right now we're not ready to start accepting prints for the print farm. I do have additional staff, and we are currently writing documentation 4 people for our staff to operate our print farm, like, you know, how to, like, the maintenance schedule we want, the programs we use, the software we use, that kind of stuff. So I don't have the staff, but my brother Doug, he does do print requests, although he's moving. I don't think he's moving just yet. I think they're closing on the house on Friday. But he has his own website. He does print requests. He's got a small print farm. I think he's got like a dozen machines or more. And he has enclosed ones too, so we can do ABS. But you can go to thw3d.com. That's Top Hat Waffle 3D. THW is an abbreviation of Top Hat Waffle. So it's thw3d.com. And he's got a nice little form there where you can send him a request and be like, hey, I need this part in this color, that kind of stuff. And he'll get back to you. So I've been referring people to him until we actually get our stuff going. And he's already used to setting up. He sells on Etsy and stuff, so he's used to shipping out things and everything. I think he's either using ShipStation or ShipEasy, but some of the similar stuff that that we use. So I'll just send you the link. It's thw3d.com. There you go, Nemo. Let's see. I'm checking to see. I saw someone, David said he had a question about ABL Touch, but I don't see your question yet. I'm gonna keep scrolling. But you guys got to post your questions. Be as detailed as possible so I can see what I can do to answer your questions. Okay, so Mike V is asking, which pit thing to use with Micro Swiss All Metal Hot End and the Easy ABL? So the Micro Swiss All Metal Hot End, that is the same mount as your standard Creality hot end. So the Micro Swiss, I'm assuming you're using a Creality printer. Most people that are using the Micro Swiss all metals are using them on Creality machines. If you're not, let me know otherwise in the chat. Yeah, just the standard Petsfang is fine. The single 5015, they're great coolers. My thing is, so basically you got your aftermarket cooler systems. You got the Petsfang, you got the Hero Me. Those are like the two, I would say, best ones in my opinion. Both of them perform great. I've got both setups here. I've got a Petsfang on Bertha for my high flow system. I've had that on there for a couple of years. The Petsfang has been around a little longer as far as I recall. And then there's a Hero Me. The Hero Me is a little bit less materials, but there's more parts. You just got to read through the documentation. Both those mounts have documentation on, okay, you have this hot end, you have this printer, you have these accessories, you know, like an Easy ABL. These are the parts you need to print for that. So the only thing I can tell you is that for like the ducts, the fan ducts, make sure you have a silicone sock on there, especially if you're using PLA on the actual heater block. ABS is what I print our hot end ducts in. I usually print the entire mount in ABS, but you can get some sagging with some of these mounts just because of the heat that's coming off that heater block where they'll start sagging. PETG is a good material that you can print without an enclosure. Just be careful with it on any surfaces, glass, easy flex plates, you know, build tack, that kind of stuff, because PETG likes to bond to surfaces. PETG I have had bond to bare glass when I used to print with glass and take chunks out of it. So put something down to act as what they call a release agent. So just something to put a barrier between the actual surface and the printed part. So, you know, Vision Miner, PVA glue stick, hairspray, that kind of stuff. You want something between it. Otherwise, you could potentially bond the PETG to the surface. So, but I think either one of those, the Petsfang, I think is a good cooler still. They haven't released many updates for it because I don't think they really need it. They kind of got it, you know, they kind of got it pretty good. That's David Petzel. He was the designer of the Petsfang. He did a really good job with that. So some people just don't like it because it is a large mount. So, but you know, in my opinion, I don't really think the slight more weight it adds over like something like the Hero Me really makes a difference, especially on, you know, standard machines. So, Jonathan Bayer, how's the puppy? He's doing great. He's just being a good boy. I don't know if you guys. There he is. Yeah, we'll give you guys something towards the end. How's that? Since they're being good. Can you tell they tuckered themselves out earlier? They've already done all their playing. So, David, I'm not quite sure what your question is. He says, when installing a ABL Touch, do I have to save it to the printer? I don't know what you mean by that. With any auto bed leveling system, whether it's a BL Touch or Easy ABL, you're going to have to update your firmware on your printer to tell it that you have that sensor, whatever sensor it is you're using. And you're also going to have to tell it where that sensor is physically located on the hot end by setting your sensor offsets. So, and then you'll have what's called a Z-offset, which tells the printer how far the nozzle needs to move down after the sensor triggers to get to the zero height on the bed. So, in general, for auto bed leveling probes, the process is, you print out a bracket or a mount to put it on the printer. You physically install it. You do your wiring. You update your firmware. You set your Z offset, and then you update your starting G code. So, and we have starting G code. If you go on our help center, which is support.th3dstudio.com, you type in Easy ABL starting G code. You can use that starting G code with a BL Touch as well. So, and that will do, that starting G code does the G28, the G29, that generates the mesh, and then it also does a nice little purge line to kind of try to clean off your nozzle in the front left corner of your bed before you start a print as well. We use that starting code on all of our machines. So, William said his week isn't starting well either. The Raspberry I ordered had bad RAM. Oh, that's rough. I've had very low failure rates with Pi boards DOA. I mean, we go through over 1,000 of them a year. I think we maybe have 2 that are DOA, if that. Knock on wood. I'm going to knock on wood right now before I jinx myself. But we rarely ever get DOA Pis. I can't remember the last time it was. So, Dominic's asking about printing TPU on an Ender 5 with a tough extruder, the 85A, so that's kind of the softer stuff. I would say probably stick around like the 20 millimeter a second range. And the main downside of printing flexible stuff over Bowden is you can't go as fast as direct drive. Some people say you can. In my experiences, you just can't go as fast as a direct drive setup just because it's such a longer distance to push. But you want to have something like our tough tube or Capricorn tubing between the extruder and the hot end because it's going to take out a lot of slack and reduce the risk of the filament bunching up on itself as it's being pushed through the tube. So it sounds like you have a good setup there. You said you're using the Capricorn tubing. You got our tough extruder. I would say go around like 20 millimeters a second for the print speed and lower your retraction. I found that actually turning off retraction yields me better results on a Bowden system when I'm printing TPU on it. But, play around with it. Do like a calibration cube, do a benchy, and get it dialed in before you start running off parts. So, like my main printer I use if I'm printing, whenever I print TPU parts, it's usually for my drone. They're usually smaller, and I actually printed on my Wanhao i3 Mini, and that's got our tough tube on it with the stock hot end and a tough extruder, and it works great, but I can usually get up to around 20 to 30 millimeters a second, and it doesn't bunch up. And I think the hardness on the TPU I have is like 90 something. There's some generic ones I've had for a while, and I long lost the boxes. 2 of them I don't even know what brand they are, but I have one that's stiffer, and I also have one that's pretty soft. So let's see here. So Matt said Matt picked up an ESP 8266 and some NeoPixels, and he's going to slap them on his X1. What are you using to tie all those together? If you don't have Home Assistant, I would highly recommend Home Assistant. And for firmware for that ESP 8266, there's a plugin for Home Assistant called ESP Home, and that's what I use for like anything that's DIY where I'm taking an actual development board, like one of these little guys. I'll just show you guys these real quick. These are just little boards that connect to Wi-Fi. You do your initial flash over USB, and then you got a bunch of input-output pins on here, analog pins. I use ESP Home on these because they tie into Home Assistant really nice. You can do thermostats with them. You can do motion sensors, door and window sensors, control LED lights. Displays and stuff even. The possibilities are literally endless because it's limited to what you can actually do. But I always use ESP Home if I'm building a DIY thing that's not like a pre-built plug or a bulb. I'll use ESP Home. If I'm working with like a plug, like one of one of these guys here. I've got one of the prototypes here, which is why it doesn't have the lid. because it's not actually glued on here. But if I'm using like a smart plug, I'll run Tasmota on the smart plug or smart bulb because it's a simple device. It's just controlling a relay, a button, and an LED most of the time. Tasmota works great for that kind of stuff. But if I'm using something where I'm building a project from scratch with like one of these development boards with the ESP8266s or the ESP32s, I'll use ESP Home. So, but there's a ton of firmwares out for these boards. So, you can spend days and days just looking up different types of firmwares that run on these ESP boards. I just go to ESP Home because it does everything I need to do. I haven't hit a limitation of that firmware, and it integrates directly with Home Assistant, which is what I use for all my automation stuff. So, but I see Max CJ is talking about WLED. WLED is another popular firmware for these boards if you're just strictly controlling LEDs and stuff. It's definitely more feature-rich for LED control than what ESP Home can do. But if you just want basic, patterns and on, off, and set colors, ESP Home works great with that, with like the NeoPixels. So, and when people say NeoPixels, they usually mean any controllable, individually addressable LED solution. And there's like, 10 different chip variants that all work with the NeoPixel protocol. So people just refer to them as NeoPixels. I've got a bunch of different, I have a bunch of different versions of LEDs, and you can pick up stuff from different brands. So, but, there we go. There's a home automation tangent. Have I found any new ABL program problems with the Ender 6? I have not. I just don't run fast probing, because this printer just does not seem to like running fast probe. So, that's the only caveat I had with the Ender 6 is it does not like running fast probe. But this machine's been really reliable. The only thing I have noticed, and I don't know how many of you guys are watching have an Ender 6. Do you guys notice that your hot end fluctuates temperature a lot? Because mine is fluctuating a good 2 to 3 degrees Celsius. And I didn't notice that initially, but I've been paying closer attention to it. I have been using it to run prints, and everything seems to print fine, but my hot end temperature is all over the place. And I'm thinking it might be related to that breakout board. So I was actually going to run a dedicated thermistor line from unplug it from the breakout board and run a set of 2 wires from there down to the board, because I have a feeling that it's introducing some interference because they're sharing the ground line for the thermistor with other parts on the hot end, like the heaters and the fans. And I think that's causing some stability issues with the temperature. So I don't know if maybe I have a bad board from them. I'm still running the stock board in there. But yeah, I think my plan is to get the Ender 6 LCD video done tomorrow, get that shot and get it edited and posted out by Wednesday. And then I'm going to start messing around with what's involved with changing the board out. And I'm going to see if I put the easy board in there, if it's going to still have those fluctuations. So, but it's fluctuating a lot. I'll accept 1, maybe 2 degrees, but it's been higher than that. It's been like 3, 4. I don't know if I've seen 5 yet, but it's been higher than normal. And the thing is, if it fluctuates too much, you can actually falsely trigger thermal runaway. So it hasn't done it yet, but I just was curious to know if anybody else has noticed that, because I've noticed that on my Ender 6. But so far it's been a decent machine. I don't really have any complaints on it after putting the Easy ABL on there and the LCD, but I did notice the fluctuation with the temperature. So I did think about, because I do have, I noticed there's always a lot of people like, damn it, I didn't get the notification from YouTube that you're streaming. I do have, like, my Home Assistant knows when our channel's live. That's how it turns the cube on here. I've got an automation that does that. And I was thinking that I could have it send out an email to, like, Zapier or something, which then could send a trigger out to our mailer light system, which we use for our email marketing. I'm wondering if we have, like, a sign up where you can sign up to just specifically be notified for live streams. Would that be something you guys would be interested in getting? I don't know if email is quick enough. If anybody has any ideas on, like, sort of an instant notification system to, like, I don't know, SMS people or what, I am open to looking at some other stuff to send out notifications, because I don't even get notifications for our own channel subscribed to this channel. Like, I am actually, let's see here, if I go here, hopefully I don't get the like the feedback loop here, but I have, like, I'll show you guys right here. So if I go here, channel, I have all notifications turned on for our channel. I have not gotten a notification from YouTube about live streams from any of the people I follow in a long time. So if you guys are interested, I'd be interested in chatting about what kind of ideas you guys have for a notification system, because I can use Home Assistant because it's already monitoring the channel's live status to control the LED, and it wouldn't be much for me to have Home Assistant to send like a trigger to Zapier or an email to then go out. But I also know there's like push notification plugins you can get with your website. So like you can go to our website and click a button, and then it would send a notification out to your web browser or your phone. Like you can click it and be like, allow notifications from this site, that kind of stuff. It's just an idea. But yeah, I'm curious to know if anybody has any other ideas with that. So, oh, one other thing I want to mention, because Adam was talking about the Ender 6, I would check the motor temperature, and if your motor's not running very warm on your Ender 6, because mine does run warm, not hot, warm. But if yours is really cool, it could be that Creality has a VREF set too low on your Z, and if that's the case, and your Z is also not moving very smooth, because I did have to go back and readjust my eccentric nuts on the bed after about, I don't know, 5 or 6 prints, because it was hanging up. This bed, I'm about the design of it because of how it's cantilevered, but it's a heavy bed for it to move up and down, and if the VREF is set too low on the Z, then you're going to get probing issues. And the reason I mention that too is because that board is running the Z in stealth chop mode, which is normally fine on most printers, but that heavy of a bed that's cantilevered with one motor, everything has to be running smoothly or it's going to lose steps, because stealth chop is quiet, but it doesn't have a lot of torque. So I would love for them to have just put a 4988 on the Z motor on that, to be completely honest. Like on the Ender 3 Max, they did a hybrid approach where X and Y are TMC 2208s and Z and E are 4988s. I really like that approach, because even if you're running the drivers in standalone mode, which Creality does, you get the silence on your X and Y, which are the two motors that make the most noise, but then you also get the slightly noisier drivers on Z and E, but those motors don't make a ton of noise when you're printing. The only time you'll really hear the Z motor is when you're homing, and after that, you don't really hear it while it's printing. So I do like that hybrid approach. I would like to see them do that on more machines if they're going to just run all the drivers in standalone mode with no communication between the driver and the firmware, so you can change what modes they're running in, like stealth chop versus spread cycle. But I think the hybrid approach of having two different drivers on the board not only saves them money, because now you're not putting Trinamics on the Z and E, but you also then can run linear advance if you're running something cheaper like a 4988 or a 4982. And again, those two motors don't make a ton of noise during printing. The X and Y are what you usually want to have Trinamics on, because those are the ones that make the most noise. They're doing the longest moves. They're doing a ton of them. You know, that's just my opinion there. So, but yeah, I would probably bump up the VREF just a little bit if it's not, if your motor's like cool to the touch, it's probably that your VREF is too low, and if that Z is losing steps, it's going to cause all sorts of issues when it comes to probing. So, and that's with any printer with any sensor. You got to remember, like all these auto bed leveling sensors, none of them are going to be accurate if your Z axis is not moving smoothly. So your sensor's only going to be as accurate as the machine is in terms of moving. So if you have a printer where the Z's hanging up or dragging, or it doesn't have enough current going to the motor to make it move the distance it's actually being told to move, your sensor accuracy is just going to be out the window, and you're going to get all sorts of weird issues with it because the Z's not moving correctly. So let me see here. Film Factor's asking about putting Marlin on a Mellowfly E3, which is a rep firmware board. I was told Marlin does not support it. I wouldn't be of any help with that. Basically, though, in terms of getting a new board supported, it's a huge pain in the ass, even for someone like me. You would have to make a pins file. You would have to then try to figure out what the bootloader is on that board and how it's going to accept firmware, and then generate a Platform.io environment for that board. And if the manufacturer doesn't give you any sort of information on like what memory address the bootloader starts and ends at, you could be overwriting the bootloader. I would see if that's a more popular board. I mean, I haven't heard of it, Mellowfly E3. I would see if somebody else has done like any sort of videos or firmware on it for it, and see before you actually go and try to start from scratch. See if somebody got something started. So, but yeah, it's going to be a pain to do that. You'd probably be better off, you know, spending your money, like if you value your time, spending your money on a board that just supports Marlin instead of trying to reverse engineer someone else's completely different product. So, or email them. Maybe they'll get back to you and give you information. So, let's see here. Yeah, the Chiron's a printer I want to dig back into today. Someone sent me pictures of their Chiron on our stream email, and if you're watching, that looks exactly like ours. I don't see any differences between the older Chiron we have and the new one. So, check your wires. Ours had tin wires on it. So, Superconductor, any recommendations for the Ender 6 direct drive for a direct drive extruder / hot end and how to mount it? I actually was talking to Joe here about that, and there's not a ton of mounts out right now for the Ender 6. So I don't know of one. Maybe someone in chat can chime in. I haven't looked recently. I looked about 2 or 3 weeks ago and didn't find much out there. But we're talking about working on something for the Ender 6 because I want a better cooling system, because it's okay stock. It's not great though. So it's what I would expect for a stock cooling system. All right, let's see here. I'm just trying to keep up on chat here. Scrolling up. Where were we at? Here we go. Strat is asking, do you need to ever manual level your bed if you have a BL Touch? If you have any auto bed leveling sensor, if you're not going to solid mount the bed, you should from time to time go back and re-level it, especially if you have like knobs, like big knobs on it with springs, because they can move and like unscrew as you print just from the vibrations of the motor. Yeah. Definitely keep your bed level. In general, the less work your ABL system has to do to compensate for your bed being tilted or warped or ever, the better. So get your bed as level as you can. Some people, when they do the solid mounts, I don't, but you can do this, is what a lot of people do is they'll do like the solid bed mounts, and they'll then get washers and shim up the corner. So let's say, you know, my front right corner is down a little bit after I take the reading. And if you have a sensor, you can then have it take the reading and see what your mesh looks like. And then they'll shim it up and get as flat as possible. That's a good thing to do. It's not required, but it's not going to hurt. So the only thing I would say is if you're using something like our solid bed mounts, put the washers between the solid bed mount and your carriage plate. Don't put the washers between the bed mount and the bed, because what you're going to do is you're going to have a big washer that's usually metal, and you could hit some of the traces on the board. Put them underneath the actual mount itself, between the mount and the carriage plate. Jay's asking, he's got a Wanhao i3 Plus, and he wants to know what options he has for boards. As far as I know, there's no drop-in replacement boards for that printer. And because it's got that touchscreen, it's got a D-Win touchscreen on it, you're into very much DIY territory where you're going to be cutting up cables, printing aftermarket mounts. My personal opinion, because those are older machines too, is I would just either sell, if you could only have one printer, I would sell that and get something else that's a little more modder friendly. The Wanhao i3 Plus, while it's a decent machine, or was at the time, it's definitely outclassed these days by other cheaper printers. I would not put the time and money into converting it over to, you know, he's asking about like, I don't know what the first one is. but even putting a duet in, I personally wouldn't spend the time on that. If I was going to go into that length with modding a printer, I would get something like an Ender 3 Pro or Ender 3 V2, because that's going to give you a more modder-friendly platform. The Wanhao i3 Plus was, very much designed to use it stock. So, and that touchscreen that's on there is going to have to go if you're going to, especially a duet board or, really anything else, because it's closed source firmware. Now, there are projects out there, if you want to breathe some new life into it, called ADV i3++. A guy named Sebastian has his own firmware, kind of like what we do with multiple other machines. He has one that's specifically geared for that printer. And also has, I don't know if he has like insider knowledge or a connection with the screen manufacturer, but he's somehow has been able to completely make his own firmware for the screen. Like, he's got all the dev tools and stuff. I have been trying to find DWin dev tools, and I found some, but they always crash and error out. So I don't know if he's just got some sort of connection, but he's done a lot of stuff with the i3 Plus. So I would personally, if I had that printer, I didn't want to get rid of it, I would go and just do the ADV i3++ firmware on there and just, use that as much as you can. If you really want to get into modding a printer, I would say pick up something else that, is like an Ender 3 style with the V-slot extrusion. That's going to give you more flexibility and more upgradability in the future. Because the other problem with that Wanhao is that their board, just because they're trying to make the most use out of space, is a custom board, and it's super slim. It's not a square-ish board. You don't have, you don't have a ton of room to put a bigger board in there. So it can get really, it can be a pain very quickly. So like, I wouldn't even do it. We had an i3 Plus here, and we ended up parting it out because the stock board had issues. I was like, I don't feel like converting it. It's just going to be too much work for just such a basic printer. So let's see here. CG Play says he's got an Ender 3 V2. He's not happy with the cooling. He lives in a very hot place. He lives in a very hot place. He said, so my prints usually get bad cooling. I want to upgrade the fan mount, but I don't have different fans. So my recommendation would be the Hero Me Gen 5 with a 5015 fan. Those are going to give you a ton of airflow. We carry 5015 fans for the Ender 3 V2. You'd want the 24 volt version. That would basically be the most straightforward upgrade, is go through, download the Hero Me Gen 5, read through the docs, figure out what parts you need to print for that mount, and then you can just go ahead and you snip the wires for your existing layer fan, you splice in the new ones, and then a 5015 is going to give you a lot more airflow than the stock fan. So Neo Visser's asking about what length of belt I need for a dual Z for the Ender Extender 400. I have no idea because I don't have one of those kits. If I did, I'd be more than happy to figure that out, but I don't. I don't have one of those kits here. So, I would definitely, CJ Plays, I see you got other messages here, is asking about, is it possible to use one of these mounts with the standard fans? Yes, the Hero Me Gen 5 does have support, as far as I remember. Maybe it was a Gen 3, but they had support for the stock fans. But the problem is those stock fans don't move a lot of air, so you might get slightly better cooling with it, but those tiny little blower fans, they don't move as much air as something like a 5015. The 5015 is my go-to size for a layer fan if I'm putting an aftermarket one on there. So Andrew Humphrey's got an SSR. He ordered it a few weeks ago. I see somebody's doing an AC bed. Be careful. Make sure you ground your bed, and take your time. Take your time. Do some nice connectors, and make sure you don't electrocute yourself. CA Dragon is asking, what is the proper way to store the setting for ABL baby stepping, via the menu or via configuration settings? Well, I'm not sure what you mean by menu, unless you're talking about the one you see. So and it varies. So let's break this down. So when you have baby stepping on an auto bed leveling printer, we're going to talk in the terms of Marlin, not any other firmware. So in Marlin, by default, when you set up baby stepping baby stepping is separate from your Z offset. Now in our firmware, just for ease of use and because it's just simpler and more straightforward, we have baby stepping combined with the Z offset. So let's say you have a Z offset of -2, you press your printer button twice to adjust your first layer height. When it brings it up on the screen, you'll see -2 already in the value showing you where you're at in terms of baby stepping. Now let's say I'm a little too far away and I bring it down 0.1, so now my offset is -2.1. Now if I turn the printer off at that point and turn it back on, my Z offset is going to go back to 2 millimeters. Now let's say my Z offset, I know 2.1 is now the dialed in one that I'm going to use. I'll then go back out of that menu. So if you press it, you go back, it'll take you back to the main screen. You go back, press the LCD, go to configuration, and then store settings. Is it configuration or control? They changed it. It's either configuration or control, but there's a store settings menu option. It could be labeled under configuration or control, depending on what version of Marlin you're using. But either way, as soon as you hit store settings now, because that baby stepping modified the Z offset by 0.1, so it's -2.1 instead of -2 in this example. Now if I store those settings, it's going to write that -2.1 offset to the EEPROM, meaning if I turn the printer off and turn it back on again, it's going to read that setting from EEPROM and my Z offset will still be at -2.1. Now if you don't have the combined Z offset and baby stepping feature enabled in your Marlin build, which it is not enabled by default if you're using just regular Marlin, then you would have to go back into your Z offset setting. And let's say you don't have it combined, you press the menu button twice, it'll bring it up, it'll show 0, and let's say I moved it 0.1 closer, it's not going to save that setting. You'd have to then go back into your Z offset setting and modify it by whatever value you baby stepped with. This is why we turn the combined feature on, because it's way more complicated, way more steps of having them separate. So because typically if you're adjusting your baby stepping on the first layer, you're probably going to want to change your Z offset and store that. So, and that's what that allows you to do, is if they're combined, it's all one variable and all you need to do is hit store settings after you're done making your adjustment, and then it's saved for the next time you go to print. But you can store settings too. This is the last thing I want to touch. I just was reading to refresh my memory. So you can store the settings from your printer LCD. You can press the button. You can go to configuration or control, depending on what version of Marlin you have. It'll either be labeled configuration or control. They've been changing things around, so just be aware of that. And then hit store settings. Now, if you're connected to your printer via a USB cable on your computer and you have like a terminal window, or you have an Octoprint setup or an EasyPi setup where you're connected to the printer over USB, you could also just send an M500 command, and that will also do the same thing as going to the LCD and stating the store setting option in that configuration or control menu. So James Smoa says, I've got a Monitor 3. When I add a 5015 fan, it wouldn't come on, or it would come on until it was at 50 speed. I had to add a capacitor to get it to work at low speed. It is common, and it's probably because the fan you're using has like an auto restart feature. Certain fans don't like working at that high PWM speed, and you can actually use what's called a slow PWM option. If you're using our firmware, there's actually an option called Fan Fix that will then set a different PWM speed for fans that need that. If you guys have purchased our new version 2 of our 5015 fans that are actually our branded fans, they have our logo and everything on it, those don't need anything special, no capacitors, no special firmware changes. Those work with the standard Marlin fan control. But some fans, especially ones that have different features like auto restart, can freak out and not work properly at the faster PWM speed that Marlin uses by default. So you can slow down the PWM signal speed, the rate that it's pulsing it on and off, and usually those will be happier and they'll spin. The problem with adding a capacitor to it is you're basically just running the fan at full speed. Even though your screen tells you you're at 50%, if you actually look at it, you're just basically running at full speed. It's not going to give you much range of adjustment. That's the problem with doing the capacitor. While it does work, it's more of a perceived working thing because the fan's not going to drain that capacitor fast enough versus what it's actually pulling out of the printer control board. So it's kind of a wash. You either change the PWM frequency that the board is outputting by modifying the software, or you just get a fan that actually responds correctly to the PWM signaling speed that Marlin uses by default. So, but yeah, Dominic. Okay, Dominic said, yeah, thanks, Tim. Running at 20 millimeter a second right now with 2 millimeter retraction, working great. I was wondering if I could dare bump up the speed. Just leave it. Be patient. That's if you're getting good prints at 20 millimeter a second with retraction on Ender 5 with TPU, just leave it. Let it ride. Because what's the point of going faster if the prints have a higher failure rate versus just letting them go and being patient with it. So, Coffeeology, long time no see, my dude. Yeah, I haven't seen you in a while on the streams. I'm glad to see you back. He's asking, though, you're asking resin questions. And this is a good question. Any idea if there's an Octoprint for SLA resin printers? I don't know. I don't think there is because I've got 6 resin machines and I have to do the whole sneaker net where I literally am plugging a USB drive into them. One thing I did try and it kind of worked was those Wi-Fi SD cards. And I would put those into an SD reader and plug that into the printer. But they were very flaky, and the printer wouldn't always see that the file's updated. So I just use, I keep it simple. If I'm going to do something on the resin printer, which I need to get those hooked up this week as well. Things are kind of getting cleaned up here, so now we're moving into getting new stuff set up and projects that are, on the back burner, getting them completed. And one of those things is the resin printers. But we literally just got little compact 8 gig USB drives, and we put a little lanyard on them so we don't lose them, and we just use those for the resin printers. But if anybody has any idea if there is like a Octoprint type solution for resin printers, I'm all ears. That'd be cool. I'd even be willing to make a video on it once I figure it out. But basically you would need something that the easiest way would have something that could plug into the USB port that would emulate a USB drive and then provide a network interface to talk to that. So at the very least you get files uploaded to it. I don't know if you'd ever, well, I shouldn't say ever because anything's possible with enough time and money. But at the very least, it'd be nice to just be able to shoot the files over the network and that's it, even if it's Wi-Fi. But I'm not aware of any solution. Maybe somebody has anything, has an idea or a solution that they know of. I don't know of one right now. So let's see here. So Vincent Robles said he's got Ender 3 V2, easy board, easy ABL, anti-backlash notch, dual Z kit, and now he's wanting to upgrade the hot end. He wants to do a direct drive all metal. What's needed besides your tough all metal hot end and tough extruder? So if you're going to do a direct drive setup and go through that conversion, I would do what's called the tough direct setup, which is you still need the hot end and the extruder, but there's a heatsink that goes on and it replaces the lid of the tough extruder, and the heatsink then, or the hot end heater block and heat break screws right into that, so you have a shorter throw. It's based off of the E3D Titan Aero design, and I just put those heat sinks on sale today because they, we sell a few of them a month, but we've got a lot of them, so we put them on sale just to kind of clear them out. But they're a really nice setup. I just built a G-Tech 820 for my buddy Joel, who helps us out with the printer farm. We put an easy board in it, but we did the Tough Direct setup with the Tough Direct heatsink, the extruder, and the hot end, and he does TPU on it for his drones, and he's been really liking it. So, and we have a couple machines in the print farm that have those. So that's what I would do if you're doing a direct drive setup, is do that, because it's all one unit then. So I'll see if I can find an example here. Oh, actually, I have a picture of his printer with our stuff on it. Let me see if I can pull a picture up. I gotta remember when he brought that over for me. I am looking for his printer build. It came out really nice. He was having a lot of issues with the stock G-Tech board, so I was like, let's just throw an easy board in it. And we did, and he's been very happy with it. Give me just a second here. I'm trying to find his pictures, because I took a bunch of pictures, because I was like, this came out really good. And he's been using it, and he's been very happy with it. I'm just trying to remember when that was. Hang on, I think I sent him pictures on Telegram. Where's my Telegram? Joel. I won't spend too much time on. Okay, when did I send him? Is this March 21st? So 3/21. Here they are. I shall show you guys what it looks like. Let's see. Let me switch over to my screen sharing here. So this is just, we converted it to an easy board system here. You see I mounted everything, printed a little adapter bracket, kind of hodgepodge everything together. So this is the final setup. The only reason this is a go ahead and roast me. This is a big Tree Tech screen that I'm using just in the 128/64 mode with the easy board because it does support it. We're not using the touchscreen mode. But I just happen to have this screen, and this was the only screen mount for the G-Tech A20 in terms of something that replaces a stock screen that fit this, so I didn't have to design a new one. But this is actually the we put a CR10 carriage on here. We replaced the G-Tech carriage with a CR10 one, and this is the Tiny Machines Titan Aero mount, which is in our Unified 2 STL pack. So we did the Easy ABL Pro. You can see here the heatsink with the extruder. So the heatsink bolts onto where the lid was for the extruder, and then you have your hot end down there and a 50-15 fan. Let me see if I have... Did I take a closer up picture of the hot end? I've got a video here. Let's see.
Freaking printer is alive!
Yes, hang on. Let me show you guys here. So I just sent him a really quick video of just doing the test print. So you can see here. So the hot end, you can see here, the block, this is a nice compact design. So the block and the heat break go right into the heatsink. So you got the pancake stepper, the block goes right into the heatsink, and then it just gives you a nice compact setup. I do really like this design. The Hemera is like what E3D is now pushing for that. I like this design. It works. That's really what it comes down to. It just works. So, oh, look at, here's a picture of Remo. This was on March 21st. Look how tiny he was. Oh my God. Sorry, I don't want to go on a photo tangent. But anyways, that's what I would do if you're doing direct drive. So, let's see. Next one. What's the best way to remove PEI sheet and adhesive on a flex plate? My nozzle ripped a hole in the PEI sheet. Easiest way I've found is to put it on the printer bed, heat it up to like 60 C, and then slowly peel it off. And then there's a couple different ways you can get the adhesive off. Acetone works really well. Just use it in a well-ventilated area. If you don't have acetone or don't want to use it, WD-40 is actually really good as long as you let it soak in at removing adhesive. So you can let it soak in and then kind of take a scraper and scrape it off. And then make sure to clean it with like IPA to get all the WD-40 off. Let's see. R Mills, I don't know. R Mills is asking about some random inductive probe and how to hook it up. I'm not familiar with that. PL08. Oh, it's one of those cube ones. That's like what was that company that I did bought it? It was an older one. Like Zone Star uses these. These things are terrible. They're not very accurate. Yeah. You can get them working, but I've had those. That's what my ANET came with, and it lasted me like 2 weeks. So they're a pain. And they're kind of a pain in the mount because they're like this big block. So, KY Guns and Radio says his under 6 temperatures are solid, maybe 1 degree fluctuation. Okay. I'll have to check. Maybe it's my... Here's the thing. I've already had one issue with the under 6 where the breakout board, the connector going into that, something was loose and my e-motor stopped moving. So I'm wondering if maybe that my connector has a fault. So, talking about live stream notifications, we are... I accounted for the 15-minute delay, so we are an hour. I want to keep these streams at an hour. So I'll go through and see if there's any other questions from any of our channel members. Shout out to KY Guns and Radio. Just saw that you joined the call to TH3D. Make sure you connect your Discord account to your YouTube account that you're using to sponsor, because you've got access to the VIP section of our Discord server. And I'm in there and I try to answer people's questions, just chat and get feedback on stuff. So let's see here. See if there's any other questions here. Any quick questions? Any questions from members before we wrap things up? And I do have a couple other printers. Oh, I do want to ask you guys watching, guys and girl, because there's probably like one girl watching, if any. I know our channel statistics. It's a sausage fest here. Matt's asking any time frame on when you have an easy board with a non-LPC chip. We're actively working on trying to get some easy board with processors that we can actually get right now. It's still like everybody's having shortages. Like this silicon shortage is screwing every single industry, including us. Vincent Roll, yeah, the Tough Ultimate Hot End package. That's a good one because you get all the parts you need. He was the one asking about converting direct drive. That's basically everything you need, whether you want to do Bowden, you want to do the direct drive setup where the hot end just slides into the groove mount on the Titan, and it also includes the heatsink and everything. That's what I would do, because then you can kind of even play with what versions you want to assemble. But my thing is, if you're going to put the work into it, I would just go right to the Titan Aero type setup where you got the heatsink and everything. That's a really nice proven design. It works. So, there's one last quick question, and then we're going to wrap it up. And I got a question for you guys. Athlon is asking S-Gen L or Gen L? S-Gen L, all the way. Gen Ls are decent boards, but they're old. They're 8-bit. If you're going to go through the trouble of swapping your board out, go with the S-Gen L. As far as I know, we still have some stock on those. I know we're getting low on them, but we still have some stock on them. So, but anyways, a question I have for you all watching is, what's going to be the next printer video? I have a Soval SVO2 and I have a Soval SVO3. Yeah, so those are the two printers. What would you guys rather see first? I think the SVO3 is what people were more interested in. The SVO2 is like this weird dual extrusion one with a touchscreen. The SVO3 is basically a bigger SVO1. And I think that's what everybody was kind of more leaning towards, was the SVO3. I'm going to do a video on both. I'm just saying, which one do you guys want to see first? So I'm personally more leaning towards the SVO3, but you guys are the one that watch this stuff. So, which one would you guys prefer to see first on the channel? I guess is my question. Tim, Hangout, I gotta see if Samantha wants to hang out tonight. So, I was hanging out with some of my buddies last night. We were playing 7 Days to Die. So, I have to give the wife some attention. So, but I wouldn't be opposed to doing a stream tomorrow, because I do want to start plugging away at this, and even just having a general hangout while I'm working on the new Unified 2 firmware that's going to the new Marlin 2081. Yeah, SVO3 seems to be the one. Yeah, so we'll get that scheduled. I got to see how tomorrow looks. I think doing the printer streams towards the ends of the week on like Thursday or Friday work out best, and it seems like most people prefer when we do them later in the day, like 4 to 5 p.m. Central when we start the stream, because more people can view them. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like you guys, in general, for the printer streams, like the later streams. So, but anyways, I'm going to stop rambling here. Before I go, though, we're going to have to wake The dog, look at, she already knows. Look at her. She's like, I know what's happening. Do you guys want a dingo stick? I know you do. Because you're a little fatty. Yes, you do. Claire, come here. Come here. I'll give you guys a dingo stick. Oh, you got a big stretch. There we go. Big stretch, big yawn. Remo, can you touch? You actually have to touch. Sit. Touch. Touch. Claire's like, I can touch. Well, Claire touched, so she gets one. Hey. You little shit. Do not take her food. Sit. Shake. Can you shake? Hey. Shake. Good boy. There we go. All right. Well, there we go. Dogs got their treats. Another good stream. Sorry about the delay, like I said. And I will see you guys on the next stream. And as always, happy printing. Make sure to join our Discord. I'll talk to you guys later.